Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Point Beyond webinar on powerful business intelligence with self-service tools. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping points. We are recording this session and we will be making the recording available to everyone afterwards. And also, I'd like to say that we do encourage questions both during and after this webinar, and you should have a question panel to the right-hand side of your screen. Please do post your questions as we go, and we should either answer them during the session and we should also have a Q&A session at the end. Before we start properly with the webinar, let's just introduce ourselves. So, my name is Ian Woodgate. I'm the Managing Director of Point Beyond, and I'm just going to say a few words before I hand over to my colleague John. So, a couple of weeks back I attended the Worldwide SharePoint Conference in Las Vegas, and one of the key takeaways from that conference was really how quickly Microsoft's enterprise strategy has been shifting from on-premise systems to the cloud. And also that these cloud-based systems are being accessed from anywhere, using not just browsers on PCs, but on mobile devices as well. One of the very hot topics at this year's conference was Power BI for Office 365. And to be clear at the outset, Power BI is a cloud-based solution. And Power BI really is Microsoft's entry into the self-service business intelligence space, which we'll be looking at today. So self-service business intelligence has been a game-changing force in management reporting in recent years because it enables end users to very quickly and easily gain very valuable analytical insights into business data, and it allows users to make better business decisions based on the insights that they can obtain. So we at Point Beyond are very excited about Power BI, and we're excited about its potential to provide new, rich capabilities to business customers using tools that are already familiar to them, like Excel. I'm now going to hand over to John, who's going to lead the webinar, and will start by introducing himself.
Great. Thank you very much, Ian, and thank you to all in attendance today, and thank you to those who might be viewing this afterwards as well. As Ian said, my name is John Burkowski. I have consulting at Point Beyond, and today I'm going to introduce Power BI from Microsoft. Our agenda for today, introductions, which we have just completed. We'll talk about first what is self-service business intelligence, just to do a bit of housekeeping about the topic itself. We'll launch into Power BI for Microsoft and talk about what it is, what it does, what it's composed of, and then hopefully in not too much longer we'll get to the demos of some things you can do in Excel and Office 365 to quickly create data stores for visualization in Excel and Office 365, and then end up taking your questions and answers. And as Ian said, feel free to ask questions in the interim as well. So Power BI is quite a large topic in and of itself with many possibilities, and today we'll only be scratching the surface of the capabilities. So it's going to be a very light overview. The objective is to inform the attendees and the viewers of its overall benefits, demonstrate some features, and really just to show how fast and easy Power BI can be used to quickly build BI solutions. I'm sure a lot of you in attendance are quite eager to see the demos, so I don't want to bore you with a lot of slides. But just in case anyone is just not quite sure of what self-service BI is, or maybe even what business intelligence is, I just wanted to do a brief explanation of those topics before we launch into Power BI. So, what is business intelligence and self-service BI? Business intelligence is a set of methodologies, tools, and processes that allows for transformation of raw data from across multiple disparate systems into meaningful and insightful information for the purposes of analyzing reporting on past behaviors, and also for optimizing future performance and decision making. It's definitely a strategic tool, and it's part of the core competency of most large leading companies today, and many small ones as well. So where does self-service business intelligence, or SSBI as we've abbreviated for many of these slides, where does this fit in? Gartner defines SSBI as end users designing and deploying their own reports and analyses within an approved and supported architecture and tools portfolio. This might be surprising to some and sound to some like a bit of a Wild West scenario where you have end users designing and deploying anything, potentially being quite disastrous. Well, I'd ask you to focus in on the second half of that, because the second half of the definition, because this is where the formality comes in. It's within an approved and supported architecture, which is run and governed and supported by IT, and with an accompanying set of supported tools. So it's definitely not a Wild West thing. It's a very structured environment, but equally on top of the structure is a large amount of agility in which business users can interact directly with approved data sources and quickly turn around reports and keep up with the speed of business. So things in common across any self-service business intelligence platform, and really any business intelligence platform. It has a bunch of components in common, and as you'll see momentarily, Power BI is no different. Business intelligence platforms provide users with the ability to discover data across the organization, both internally and from external feeds, some free, some commercial, some freely available on the web. Taking that data, transforming it and enriching it, adding perhaps calculations or standardizing the formatting, combining and mashing up data from various sources using common keys. Those are all typically IT functions to get the data into a bit of a shape where analysts can then take over and analyze and visualize the data, making sense of what's there and creating visual reports that they can then share with the rest of the enterprise to allow for reporting of past performance and predictive analytics for future business strategy and that sort of activity. It's self-service business intelligence in and of itself its key benefit is empowering business end users to do more with data, and also allowing IT professionals to focus on platform support and data governance rather than trying to help find where the data is and on building those structures. So those are the benefits. Now, the benefits don't come without their set of challenges as well, as with anything in technology. BI platforms can be quite difficult to set up and configure correctly, and they can be quite difficult to evolve as well. So when you set up a business intelligence platform with a self-service business intelligence offering on top of it, it typically involves writing large amounts of code for creating data structures, extracting data from multiple sources, transforming and shaping the data to gain consistency in naming, formatting, measurements, etc., and certifying that data to make sure it's accurate and fit for consumption. This data is then typically stored in quite rigid data structures, either in data warehouses or cubes, analytics reporting databases. Rigid in that they're often difficult to change once they're set up. Setting up a BI reporting platform can take weeks, sometimes months. In larger organizations, years are not unheard of to set up and modify and get it to the point where it's ready for general usage and ready to fulfill its purpose. And then the inevitable happens once it's up and running and the business does gain insights and start to gain value. Generally, there's another round of changes that are soon to follow to add in some insights that aren't present from the first release, and you're back to the drawing board, changing a very large set of data structures and potentially adding more risk in getting things wrong and upsetting things that are already there. A colleague of mine once worked for a very well-known UK food and beverage company that he was aware spent years and millions of pounds on a BI implementation that eventually got turned off because they just couldn't get it to the point where it was useful. So the power comes with the risk that if you do things in an unmitigated fashion and don't do things properly, the risks and costs can outweigh the value that it presents. And Microsoft aims to change that with the Power BI offering. So just as a final bit of levity on this matter, not sure if any of you have heard a similar conversation around your workspace, but BI companies can spend a lot of time and effort on BI solutions and still not achieve the desired values and benefits. And this is where Power BI comes in. So Power BI for Office 365, as Microsoft calls it, it's a self-service business intelligence solution delivered through Excel, Office 365. Power BI combines new services and features available independently in Excel and Office 365, and combines it into a single seamless set of services to be used for data discovery, data analysis, and collaboration with other enterprise users. Power BI for Office 365 enables business users to do a lot more with their data without the need for extensive BI involvement without the need for extensive IT involvement or IT spend, allowing users to discover and connect to data sources spread across the organization and also beyond organizational boundaries, as we said, in public, private, and data feeds. It's a common scenario that's well supported by this platform. It allows users to analyze and present insights from data in compelling visual formats, either on premises through Excel or in the cloud using the Office 365 Power BI SharePoint site templates. You can share reports, and I'll share both reports and data sets online with data that is always kept up to date because it's connected to your on-premise data sources. It allows you to ask questions of your data using natural language query language and get immediate answers through interactive tables, charts, and graphs, which are presented right in your browser as you're asking the questions. It also allows you to access and stay connected to data and reports from your mobile devices from wherever you happen to be. Microsoft Power BI provides a complete stack that meets all the requirements of any efficient self-service BI solution. It provides the self-service BI capabilities with the familiar Excel-based UI and is supported by powerful cloud-based capabilities of Office 365. So Power BI builds upon existing Excel features by adding a few new features, Power Query, Power Pivot, and Power View, which we'll discuss in a moment. And those are used generally by IT staff and data analysts to acquire information, join information from disparate data sources, transform it, and model it, and get it to the point where it can be analyzed. And then it's over to the data analysts to create the visualizations that they are able to share to the organization. So let's delve a bit deeper into each one of these components. We'll look at the Excel-based components first and do a demo of how Power Query, Power Pivot, and Power View are used on Excel. And then we'll have a look afterwards at the Office 365 components, Q&A, and data sharing capabilities, data management, talk about the data management gateway for exposing on-premise data, and also talk about the mobile access. Unfortunately, we didn't, due to time constraints, we weren't able to prepare a demonstration of access through mobile devices today, but that's perhaps a topic for a future webinar. As I said, this is quite a large area to cover, so due to time limitations, it was difficult to fit everything into an hour's presentation. So, Power BI for Excel. Microsoft empowers all users to gain breakthrough insights as a natural part of their day-to-day activities. Users can use Excel, which is a familiar tool which will hopefully be familiar, and thus allow the benefits of very easy learning curve to gain the new benefits that these additional components provide. So the three new add-on components, actually there are four of them, Power Query, Power Pivot, Power View, and Power Map, are all free components that are available that can be installed into existing onto existing Excel installation. It does require, I believe, Excel 2013. I don't believe anything earlier is supported, but they are free add-ins that you can start using today if you wish to connect to information and start to create visualizations. So a bit more about each one of these components, if I may. Power Query is a tool that allows you to search and access internal and external data. It allows connectivity to on-premise and cloud-based data very rapidly through a user interface. You can clean, transform, and shape data from different data sources and merge and combine data from multiple data sources to create, effectively create mashups from which you can create your visualizations. Power Pivot has been around for a while. This is this provides the fast analytics engine that sits underneath this technology. It allows you to model and refine data, but it also allows you to bring in very large quantity of information from external data sources and mash it up together for presentation. And then PowerView and PowerMap allow for very rich visual interactive presentations of your data. It allows you to create almost miniature applications that you can interact with from within Excel, or that you can publish up into the cloud for sharing with your entire organization. And without further ado, I'd like to launch into our first demo, which is demonstrating Power Query and the other Excel-based tools to gather information from disparate data sources. So the scenario that we're going to be working toward today with the Excel portion of this demo is we'll just pretend that we're a small consultancy and we want to combine data from a few different data sources, including our timesheet system, where we have our delivery information, or how much time we've charged to customers across multiple projects, and on what dates and at what rates. Our CRM system, which has information on our clients, where they're located, and a bit of information about their annual turnover. And our forecasted orders, which are one of our finance people keeps in a Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to show how we can connect these data sources together, and it will in turn allow us to answer a large number of questions that would be very difficult to answer if we had to look at reports, individual reports from each one of these systems. So this is just a step-by-step roadmap of what we'll be seeing in this demo. It will be quite fast-paced, but the key takeaway is not to be an exhaustive review of the features, but just a quick glimpse at some of the features and how quickly and easily you can combine data sources from multiple places to enable reporting. So with that, I will bring up, I'll bring up just a blank Excel workbook, start from scratch here. So here, as you can see, this is a blank Excel workbook with a few different things enabled. So I've got the Power BI tools added into my Excel workbook. So as you can see, I've got a tab for Power Query, a tab for PowerPivot, and I've also got a button in the Insert tab for Power View. Things generally start at Power Query, where you go and which enables you to go and get your data. So the first thing I'm going to do is connect to a SQL Server data source that has my timekeeping information. As you can see, you can connect to information from the web, from files, from databases, and other data sources, including OData, which I'm going to use to connect to our CRM system in just a few minutes. But first, let's go and get the timekeeping data. These are all secure connections, so if I was logging in for the first time, I would have been challenged to enter my credentials to access the database. But since I've been practicing this demo a time or two before this, I'm already authenticated. As you can see, once I connect to the database, I'm presented with a view that shows all of the objects that I can access in the database. So these are my views and tables from my timekeeping database. As you hover over each one, Power Query will show you a preview of the data that's contained in each. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get this time booked view and work with that. And this is my Power Query query editor window, where I can start to work with my data, start to get it into the shape that I want it to. So as you can see on the top, the ribbon, the familiar Microsoft ribbon metaphor, exposes a lot of different capabilities, which unfortunately we don't have time to go through all of them, but I'm hopefully going to show a good bit of them to show you how you can quickly take a big raw piece of data like this and get it into something that's a bit more workable. So I know from my requirements that I only need a subset of these columns, so I'm just going to go through and quickly get rid of some of these columns that I know I don't need. Okay, so now I have my data set down to the columns that I know that I need, that I want to work with. So the first thing that I'm going to do is my timekeeping system stores the consultant names as last name, comma, first name. And I want separate columns for last name and first name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this column. And I can split it either by delimiter or by a set number of characters. But of course, since this is a comma delimited field, I'm going to split it by the comma. And now I have a column for consultant last name, a column for consultant first name. I know there's leading and trailing spaces in here, so what I'm going to do now is trim the data, and this allows me to quickly remove leading and trailing spaces from my data columns. And then I know that to save space, I may just want to, at some point, expose just the first initial for my consultant. So I can do that by duplicating the first name column, going back to my split column, and now we're going to delimit by number of characters. We just want the first column to get the first initial of the consultant's name. And there it splits my column into two. I'll just get rid of that. And I can rename this to say consultant initial. I'm not going to go through and rename all of my columns. If I was doing this in anger, I would be renaming these to something a bit more meaningful, but just for the purposes of demonstration, it is quite easy to go in and rename the columns here. So another thing to call your attention to is, as I've been removing columns and splitting columns and doing things with my data, you'll notice that Power Query is keeping a running track record of everything that I've been doing over here. So if I want to go back and undo something, I can do that just by going back to the step, but I don't want to do that now. Also, if you see the gearbox on a particular line, that just means that there's a dialog behind it that I could go and interrogate and check what I put into the dialog box. So I've got my consultant names sorted. I've got raw data for booked cost, book rates, and the amount of time per day that they book, but what I don't have is the total amount of the sale for the consultant for that day, so I need to create a column for that. Again, very quick and easy. I can insert a custom column, call this custom column sale amounts, and I know that that's booked rate multiplied by days booked, or in this case, fractions of the day booked. And as you can see, I now have a column that represents the product of the consultant's booked rate by the amount that they've booked per day. But if you look, I have a column called is billable. I'm tracking both billable and non-billable time in here. So really, I don't want to expose the non-billable, offer the non-billable times values of sale amounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to undo that step. And you'll see that for any one of these steps, as you hover over them, there's a little X box that comes up that you can click to remove that step. So I'm going to do some data gymnastics here. I'm going to take my is billable Boolean column. I'm going to duplicate that so I keep the original one. I'm going to rename this to is billable number, which is a sneak preview of what I'm going to do to it, because I'm going to transform the data type of this column from logical, from a Boolean to a number. Very simply and easily. And then I can go back and add my custom column. Say, again, sale amount is booked rate times days booked. I've got my multiplication mark. Times is billable number. And this will give you my true sale amount, and it will zero out the time spent, time booked that was non-billable. I could also, if I wanted to get my cost of sale as well, I can multiply booked cost by days booked as well, another custom column. And finally, to change this into a more friendly name, so one more thing I wanted to show you. We have the column called work date, which is the date that the services were being provided. This is pulling back both the date and time components. So I just want to expose this as a date, so we can quickly just drop the time aspect. Now say I know that my data analysts want to sort this, want it to have views by month and by year, so for when they're pivoting the data and creating their visualizations. I can support that requirement very quickly as well. So I'm going to duplicate the date column, and I'm just going to show you how I can quickly get this to the year. So work date, year, and again, my transformation function knows this is a date and not a text, and it shows us a different set of date transformations. I can quickly just say I only want the year component of this, and it gives me the year. And if I wanted to do the month as well, I can duplicate the work date column and do the month, assuming everybody gets the concept. Now I'm going to rename this to time sheet data. Tick the box load to data model, and apply and close. And what would have taken at least a few hours of writing stored procedures or some sort of code to extract, manipulate, and move the data, I just, in a matter of a few minutes, pulled that data into my PowerPivot workbook and transformed it into a shape that I know my data analyst can work with. Quite simple and easily. So we have our SQL reporting data from our timesheet system. Now let's bring in some information about our customers from our CRM system. So we go back into the Power Query window. I'm going to say get me data from an OData feed. And I know that within our CRM system there is a administrative screen that has the links that allow me to link via OData and a few other means to my data in CRM. So I just cut and paste that. And once again, Power Query goes out and interrogates the data source to find out what information is available to bring back for working with. So I'm going to choose account set because that's where my customer data is located. Let's edit that. So one of the things you'll notice when it brings back the data, another thing remarkable about this is that it only brings back a subset of the data. I've got more than 14 customer records in my CRM system. However, for efficiency and expediency, Power Query will only bring back a subset of the information that's located for the purposes of looking at the information and being able to transform it. You don't need to bring back all of the information in your systems for this. So I think in general it tries to bring back 100 or so records, but because, as you can see, this data in CRM is quite wide, it only brought back 14 records. Now I know I don't want all of the 102 columns that are here. I only want half a dozen or so of them. So I could go through and just start to delete them one by one or few by few. But I know that I can do it via a bit of an easier way. This isn't the way that you would necessarily do it as an end user, but this exposes another interesting aspect of this tool. As you can see, as I'm going through, as you can well, hopefully see after I explain what this is, as you go through and use the Power Query query editor, what's really happening in the background is the query editor is building up code that talks about where the data is located, what you're doing with it, and then it's starting to build a list of columns to be removed. So I have a cheat sheet off on the side that has all the columns I want to remove. Just going to drop that in here. As I said, this isn't necessarily the way that you would work with data, but somebody who is familiar with this, who became familiar with this query language, if they found it more convenient to work with data in code than an interface, there's nothing saying they couldn't go in and work with it in this manner. So I apply my statement, and now I'm down to the 5 rows, the 5 columns that I want. And now you can see, because the data is now narrowed, you can see that's brought back all 8 of my customer records. And it has the city location, the revenue, which I need to split out. This is due to the fact that I had to do the brought back revenue is just a record, and that needed to be split out is more to do with the way that certain bits of data are stored in CRM. But it allows, the Power BI allows you to store unstructured data and untangle unstructured data and into a flattened structure. I now have my country field, which is null, but I know that you can see down here that I've got Birmingham is one of the cities where my customers operates out of. And just because I've seen these demos before, I know that the maps technology can get confused between Birmingham, UK and Birmingham, Alabama, USA. So I'm just going to drop a country code in here, or a country in here. And I can do that by using the replace values function. It already knows I want to replace nulls because I had a column highlighted. I'm just going to go and replace this with there. And so now we have our data set. And what this will allow me to do, and you'll see how this is used in our Office 365 portion, is just having the city and country details, or a postcode would have done as well, will allow the Power Map tool to create mapped representations of your data without the need for geospatial information. So you don't need to go out and get latitudes and longitudes for all of your locations. This the Power Map technology sits on top of uses Bing Maps for assessing data locations. So while not quite as precise, you don't need to do nearly as much of the work involved to get a mapped representation of your data. So I'm just going to rename this CRM data, and that's my second data set. And I had one more data set that I wanted to bring in. This was a workbook, Excel workbook that my financial controller uses to store financial forecasts. So I'll just go and grab that quickly. And again, Navigator allows me to select the data I want to work with. Now, as you can see, this data is stored in, this data has already been pivoted, so this was probably produced by some data that our financial controller has that he just turned into a pivot table and dumped the pivot table columns for me. So these are the next 6 months of financial projections for our customers. So I noticed that in the first row of the spreadsheet, he's got the column names, so I'm just going to say let's use the first row to represent our column headers. So now we have our column headers already defined. And because I want to flatten this data, because I can't work with the pivot data in pivot format, I need to somehow get this into a flattened structure so I can join it with my other data. Just simply by highlighting these columns, you can now say, use the unpivot feature, and in just a matter of a few clicks, I've flattened my data. Interestingly enough, on one of the Microsoft webinars that I attended that was showcasing this particular feature, the presenter remarked that a colleague of theirs used to spend roughly half, a data analyst colleague used to spend roughly half of their week manually unpivoting data to get data into this format, and now you can do it with just a few clicks in PowerPivot or Power Query. So I'm going to name this forecast data. And now I have my data sources. So Ian, how am I doing on time here?
So you're fine. Fine, John, absolutely fine.
About how long?
I certainly remember writing VBA scripts to do that kind of unpivot stuff as well.
Yeah. So about how long did it take me to get these data sets extracted?
That took you about 15, 20 minutes in total.
Okay, so yeah, and that would have taken hours to write scripts, or perhaps a few days if you went through the testing process and had to do a bit of trial and error. The last thing I'm going to show you, the second to last thing I'm going to show you is I've got these separate data sets. Now in order for my data analysts to make sense of the relationships, I need to create relationships between them. So I'm just going to create a relationship between my timesheet data and my CRM data. I do this by using the merge function, the merge feature. So I can say merge my timesheet data. I know that my account code is my unique key. Select CRM data and highlight account number. For those of you familiar with SQL, this tick box down here allows you to do either an outer join or an inner join. So I can say only include rows from these data sources, only merge rows where you find matching data between account code and account number. So I'm going to keep that selected and click OK. And now, in just a few minutes, not even that, it's going to merge these together. So you notice what it did is it took my timesheet data and added a new column onto the end that contains the data from my CRM data. So I can expand that. Say I already have my account number and account name in this data. I just want to select a subset of the columns from my CRM data. I can do that. And now I have my flattened, joined set of data set that I can hand off to my analyst to do some reporting. So I'm going to call this CRM timesheet merge. Load to data model. And we're done. So again, very quick to load these rows in as well. So you'll see it's loading in. Should result in 78,000 rows. And there we have our data set. I can take this data set now and publish it to the cloud, or just hand the notebook to my data analyst who can continue to work with the data. Another interesting thing that has nothing to do with the data that we've been working with now, but another feature that I find interesting, is this can go out to the web and scrape a web page as well to bring data off of pretty much any web page that you want. So I have for a demo here a Wikipedia page that has a list of Only Fools and Horses episodes. And you can see this page has a number of tables in it. I'm going to take the URL from this page, go to Power Query, and say I want to get information from the web. Enter the URL. Now, of course, I can't think of a practical business application why you would want to use Only Fools and Horses episode data, but as you can see, it brings back a number of data tables that you could use. What this is useful for is if you had a web page, and there's other more useful and more business applicable pages in Wikipedia, where you have listings of, I don't know, population by country, for say. You can pull those off of web pages quite easily out of any publicly available data source and merge those into your data model as well, all very quickly, all very easily, all using the tools that we've just been looking over in the past 15 minutes or so. So, I'm not going to take this any further with Excel, but hopefully that gives you an idea of just how quickly you can use Excel, Power Query, and PowerPivot to access data from different data sources, model it, and make it presentable for a data analyst to then carry the work forward to create data visualizations. Okay. So,
thanks, John. I love that. I love pulling the stuff out of the web pages. That's pretty cool.
I thought that was really slick as well. I'm going to get back to my slideshow now. So now we're going to talk about that was the Excel side of Power BI. Now we're going to talk about the Office 365 side. It is a seamless experience, but it's the Power BI capability is split across the two platforms. There's you can use Power BI on. You don't necessarily need to use the cloud offering to use Power BI in Excel. You can certainly create visualizations in Excel and share those throughout your organization. However, Office 365 allows for that to happen in a bit more of a manageable and possibly more efficient format. So the components, the major components of Office 365 are represented by the boxes on this page. You have, first and foremost, the capability to share data with your organization. Sharing data not by just publishing visualizations and charts that you create, but sharing certified data sets as well. What we mean by certified data sets is that rather than the Wild West scenario where you're making available any data set or allowing anybody to connect to any data source, which you probably wouldn't want, you can enforce governance rules and only allow data analysts access to published data sets that have been certified as correct. And that can increase the confidence of those who are consuming the information created by the data analyst in their visualizations, and avoid some of the problems where you're not quite sure what data you're working with and if it's actually if it's been sanitized and correct for use. You can also, as I said, publish your visualizations, and you can publish any chart that you create to allow anybody to interact with it on a Power BI site. And those are both made available by a new component called the Data Management Gateway, which, again, unfortunately we don't have enough time to demonstrate today, but I'll at least talk about what it can do. Data Management Gateway is an interface that allows you to publish information, expose data sources in a managed fashion from on-premise systems connected to the cloud through a secure Data Management Gateway connection. You can set it up in literally minutes, and again, it is secure, so you can lock down access to only those who need to access it. Data sharing is handled through SharePoint sites contained in the Office 365 environment, so it comes with all the standard SharePoint permissioning features that allow you to expose data either to your entire organization or to subsets of users or groups who may need access to that organization. So you can lock it down to only a few users, expose it to your whole organization, or anything in between. Power BI for Office 365 also has a feature called Q&A. Q&A is the query interface that sits on top of the data that you expose through the workbooks and data connections that you expose to through Office 365. The interesting and powerful thing about Q&A is that it supports natural language queries. So the benefit of that is that users don't need to learn SQL or any sort of other data query language. They can ask questions in a natural language and have answers brought back to them as they're asking them. Those answers are brought back. The query data is brought back in a visual format, as we'll soon see, and you can interact with the data that it brings back as well. So we'll have a demo of that in a moment as well. And then, as we mentioned a few times, mobile access to your data visualizations is enabled through Office 365 as well. So in addition to being able to connect through shared data using a web browser from your desktop or laptop, you can also use any mobile device, although with limitations, to access your data. Data is presented in HTML5, and in certain situations, it's touch-enabled as well. So the only limiting factor to mention here is that as of now, and this may be changing in the future, you have a slightly richer feature set on certain Microsoft devices than you do for other devices such as iPads and Android phones. So the Windows Store contains a Power BI app that you can download to a Surface device or a Windows Phone operating system on your mobile that allows touch access to your data visualization and allows users accessing through those platforms to interact with the data. If you're on an iPad or an iPhone or an Android device or anything else that supports HTML5, you can view data visualizations, but what you can do with them is a bit more limited. My understanding is that may be changing, but for the moment that's your key limitation. And on to another demo, this time of the Office 365 features for Power BI. What we're going to do here is view examples of already published data and visualizations. We're going to demonstrate Q&A and how you can get and interrogate your data using natural language queries to bring back visual results. And I'm also going to show you just how easy it is to share your own visualizations. So, Microsoft has a site PowerBI.com that allows you to, that is the starting point for interacting with your Office 365 Power BI experience. Here I'm already logged into our site, and this is just a standard SharePoint site. Well, sorry, it's not a standard SharePoint site. It's a Power BI template that sits in a standard SharePoint site that allows for interacting with the data that we've uploaded. Now, I admittedly cheated a little bit because this is the sample data that comes with Microsoft, that comes with the Power BI demo, but for the purposes of demonstrating what this can do, we thought this was sufficient for the starting webinar. So this bottom line down here has the documents that have already been published to the site. The data sets are Olympics data, public company financial data, World Bank indicators. The next line up are feature questions that you can publish that allow you to have basically frequently asked questions implementation for the Q&A feature. So clicking on one of these will allow you to get at certain questions that may be frequently asked in your organization. And then on the top, in a primary position, you can feature certain data sets so that people can access them quickly without having to go down to scroll down to the bottom of the page if there's a lot of information here. So I'm just going to click on the Olympics data. And in a few moments, I should have visualizations in front of me for Olympic data. So I'm not going to go through and explain what is on each one of these tabs, but I'll try to point out some of the features that Power BI exposes through Office 365. So these boxes over on the left-hand side of the page are called slicers. Once you have your data set up and data modeled, these allow users to interact with the data and do filtering in a very quick fashion. So right now the data is unfiltered. But let's just say I only want to see data for year 2000 and beyond. I can go just filter, and I'm holding my control button down as I'm clicking. You can see as I'm clicking, it's adding in the data. So now I'm only seeing top 10 sports by medal for all Olympic Games in the current century. Maybe I just want to see gold medals. And again, I can quickly interact with the data. So this is this type of functionality almost allows your users to interact with this as if it were an app. Again, more slicers. You can narrow this to only key certain things. You saw that as I narrowed the information down here, it changed the data that was available up here, so it's quite interactive as well. So again, very rich. Here's a first glimpse of map data. So as I interact and just want to see, it's not showing anything. And again, different ways that I can, as an end user, can interact with the data. So, very powerful and very, as we'll see in a few minutes, very easy to set up as well. So it's quite easy once you have your visualizations to open them up and expose them to your organization to allow users to interact with them. So those are the shared data and visualizations. Now I'm going to go back and demonstrate quickly Q&A. So as I said, I have my list of featured questions here, which are already set up, but then I can just do a general search with Power Q&A, and this will bring up all of my data sources, again with frequently asked questions, so I'm not starting off with a blank slate. I have a few questions I want to ask, so let's see. Can you show me, please, the count of medals in, this is again the Olympic data, London 2012. So this is asking for a very specific number, so again, not very visual, it's just giving me exactly what I asked for, a count of medals. Maybe I want to refine that to say count of gold medals awarded, and it updates that. But if I expand this a bit and say, let's break it down by sports, I now get a visualization that I can have a look at. So the technology behind this determines what it thinks is the best means of presenting the data that you've requested, and it shows you, it chooses that method. You can change this as well, as you'll see. So if I say by country, it now goes to a map-based view. So now that it says, now that I asked for country data, it says it thinks that the map is probably the best way to present this. And I can zoom in, and I can see by highlighting the colors on my pie chart the details behind the number of medals. But if I didn't want a map, I can say, let's see this as a bar chart. And it will revert back to the bar chart. But that's kind of messy because it's the lines are very small. So let's turn this into a stacked bar chart. Now that's a bit better as well. And again, I can interact with my data. So again, quite powerful. Quite easy to work with. So that's the Microsoft sample data, but what if we wanted to upload our own data? So I have another Excel notebook. This has a visualization in it. So I have a table of data, my customer account information, 12-month revenue, 12-month forecast, and I created a chart that shows 12-month revenue per customer versus the cost of total sales to that customer. And I can expand the data if I wish, so I can see all of my data, or if I want to just see my top accounts, I can filter it down. So let's save this as is. If I want to publish my own data, just simply go to Add, Upload File, Browse, and in just a matter of seconds, it begins to upload my file. And after a few more seconds, I should be able to interact with it. There it is. Now, if I want to promote this to my favorites, I just say Add to Featured Reports, and it's now my featured reports. And if I click on that, there's my data. Raw data is underneath it. This isn't connected, but this could be connected using the same process that we viewed earlier. And I can interact with it in the same way. Very powerful stuff and very, very quick to put together. Okay, so that's it for my demo. So those are hopefully that is, I know that was probably quite fast-moving and fast-paced and only scratched the surface of what you can do with this new technology. But hopefully that gives you a good, at least initial idea of just how powerful this new technology is and how quickly it can deliver benefits to both business users and IT users. And with that, I am done. So over to you, Ian. Oh, I'm sorry, one more slide. You can try this.
Thank you very much, John.
Sorry, one more thing.
Cool.
Forgot this was coming up. You can try this for yourself by just going to PowerBI.com and signing up for a trial account, and then you can do some clicking around and playing with the test data that we just worked with. You can also set up your own data management gateway and try connecting to your on-premise data as well. And with that, I'm done. So back to you, Ian.
Thank you very much, John. That's really nice demos. And what I really like is that you're doing most of it with Excel as well. So you're not going out and having to learn a new tool to create these views. It's all it's easily doable within the Excel, the Excel client that everyone's used to using. We've got a few questions actually, John. If you're good to go.
Sure.
The first question is, we've got millions of rows in our data set. How well is this going to scale to very large data sets?
I don't have a good answer on that, but if you use this, if you use the 64-bit version of Excel, then Microsoft's standard advice is that you're limited only by the resources that you have on the computer that you're accessing the data from. So Power BI and especially Power Query and PowerPivot try to economize on the resources that are consumed on your laptop or desktop where you're massaging the data. It stores and tries to push as much of the processing power as it can off to back-end systems. Now, I'm sure that's probably easier done with some sources rather than SQL Server, rather than with others like Oracle or SAP. But it does the PowerPivot technology does try to economize on resources by thus allowing very large data sets to be worked with within Excel. So in theory, limitless. I'm sure that's not it, but that was the best answer that we were able to come up with from our research so far.
So, certainly, I mean, there is dependency, as you rightly say, on the resources on the machine, because ultimately this data is being held in memory on the machine running Excel. However, that in-memory database is very, very efficient. I certainly saw demos at the SharePoint conference where people were working with upwards of 100 million rows, and it was absolutely fine with that kind of scale of data. In fact, one of the guys opened a spreadsheet with 100 million rows in it, and he sorted it, and it took a flat fraction of a second to do a sort on the 100 million rows. So it was quite impressive. Certainly seems to scale pretty well. I've
seen similar demos, and yes, Microsoft says that it can sit on top of very large data sets. They drop the phrase "big data" a lot when they're talking about this. So large sets of unstructured data should be supported as well as anything else, any large structured data that you have.
Okay, we have another question here, which is on the Power Query that you demoed. Is the data static once it's loaded into Excel, or is it dynamic in that if the source data updates, will the data in Excel be updated if it's been brought in using Power Query?
That's a great question. It is dynamic. So remember that you're connecting to your data source, and the connection remains in place. So as long as you have your connection in place, then as the data changes underneath, then so will your visualizations. So yeah. What we didn't get a chance to demonstrate today was connecting an on-premise data source to Office 365 using Data Management Gateway, but that would be the way that you would maintain that connection, that secure connection to allow your visualizations to be updated as the underlying data sets changed. So yes, it's very much dynamic.
We'd love to do that in a future webinar, I think, wouldn't we, John? I think that does sound very interesting. Another question is, on the Excel Power Query, did you query direct to the SQL Server, or was there a data source set up beforehand?
I queried directly to the SQL Server.
Yeah, so this is an alternative mechanism for connecting to data sources. This isn't actually dependent on the traditional create a data connection in Excel. Power Query is an alternative mechanism for getting data into Excel.
and you can directly connect to any of the other supported data sources as well. So there were quite a few. Interestingly enough, Facebook was one of those offerings that's currently available. But according to the presentations and literature that I've been having a look at, there's more to come.
Yeah, and crucially, it supports OData, which
Yes.
seems to be a rapidly emerging standard for data exchange. So you've got a lot of flexibility there.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, John, which is on Power Query, what power do we have over the user credentials? So when you specify a connection, how do you specify who it's logging into?
Any credentials you have to hand. I'm not quite sure I understand that question, but
I think what happened is when you did the demo, it didn't show. We didn't see you entering credentials. I think
yes.
that was because you previously logged in, right?
Yes. No. The first time you're connecting to a data source, it will challenge you for credentials. So for SQL Server, you could enter either a SQL Server user ID and password, or if it's set up to authenticate through Windows, you can enter a authorized Windows ID as well. And that goes the same for any data source that you're connecting to. If you're connecting to Excel on a file share, then and it's a password protected file share, then you need to enter that as well. So yes, it does respect and honor the underlying security that's been set up.
Yeah, I think we just didn't see that because you tested beforehand and you'd already put in your credentials.
Yes.
Okay. Is Power Query available as an add-in for Excel 2013 now, or is this a preview that you're demonstrating? I can answer that, or you can, John.
Yeah, this is available live now. This is not a preview copy. It's been in beta for a while, but my understanding is this is
No, it's released now.
Yeah, it's released.
So if you go, go on.
However, the Power BI for Office 365 still is in beta. So
yeah. But if you just want to use Power Query, you can download that now as long as you've got Excel 2013.
Absolutely, yes.
Last question, actually. You mentioned outer joins on when you were linking the different data sources. Can you also do a left join?
Yes, you can. So you can bring back, you can, if you untick the box that says only bring rows back where it's present in both data sources, then it will do a left join, I believe. I've not tried that, but I believe what it does is it will favor whatever data source you have in the uppermost position. So I don't know that it gives you the power to do to specify left join or right join, but you can do either an outer join or a left join.
You'd have to make sure that the one you wanted was on the top, basically. Okay. Well, we're slightly over time, and we've no more questions. So I'm just going to say thank you very much to everyone for attending. We hope you found the session useful. John's covered a lot of ground in a very short space of time. If you do have any questions or would like any more information, please do feel free to get in touch with us, and our contact details are on the screen now. Otherwise, just want to say thank you very much to John for preparing the session and the demos, and thank you to everyone for attending, and we hope you have a nice weekend.
Thanks from me as well, and we hope to hear from you.